The Money Detox, 30 Days of Spending Nothing, and What It Does to Your Brain. Everyone thinks saving money is hard. They're wrong. Saving money is trivially easy. The math is not complicated. You earn X, you spend less than X. The difference compounds. A child can understand this. A spreadsheet can execute it. There is no mystery here, no secret formula locked behind a paywall or a weekend seminar. The arithmetic of wealth accumulation is, by any objective measure, one of the simplest equations in human civilization. The hard part, the genuinely, brutally, neurologically hard part, is not getting rich. It's stopping being poor. These are not the same thing, not even close. And the moment you understand the difference between those two statements, you will have crossed a threshold that most people never find in their entire lives. Most people spend their whole existence trying to solve the wrong equation. They ask, how do I make more money? When the real question, the one that actually determines their financial trajectory, is, why does every dollar I earn seem to evaporate before I can do anything meaningful with it? That's the question this experiment answers. 30 days, zero discretionary spending, not a single dollar on anything that isn't a biological necessity or a pre-committed obligation. No coffee, no streaming, no impulse buys, no just this once, no I deserve this, no, it's only $5. 30 days of radical financial silence. And what emerges from that silence will disturb you in ways you are not prepared for. Because what you'll discover isn't just how much money you waste. That part is almost boring in its predictability. What you'll discover is the architecture of the cage you've been living in. And more unsettling still, you'll discover that the cage door has been open the entire time. Think about gravity for a moment, not as a metaphor, as a physical reality. When a rocket launches from Earth, it doesn't fight gravity by going fast. It fights gravity by achieving escape velocity, a specific threshold speed of approximately 11.2 kilometers per second, below which no amount of effort matters. You can burn fuel, you can push harder, you can work longer. But if you never cross that threshold, gravity wins. Every time, without exception. The rocket falls back. This is not a motivational poster. This is physics. Now apply it to money. The financial system you were born into has a gravitational field. It is not metaphorical gravity. It is a real, measurable, mathematical force composed of interest rates, fee structures, pricing tiers, and the compounding logic of capital. And just like Earth's gravity, it doesn't care about your intentions. It doesn't care how hard you work. It doesn't care that you're a good person who deserves better. It operates on pure, indifferent mathematics. And here is the brutal truth that nobody in the financial wellness industry wants to say out loud. Most people are not in orbit. They are in a permanent state of atmospheric drag. They are burning fuel constantly, working, hustling, grinding. But they are never achieving escape velocity. They are moving, yes, but they are moving in a circle. Or worse, they are moving upward just enough to feel like progress before the gravity pulls them back down. The 30-day money detox is not a savings challenge. It is a controlled experiment in understanding the gravitational field you're operating in. It is the equivalent of a rocket scientist turning off the engines mid-flight to measure exactly how much drag the atmosphere is creating. You stop spending not to save money, though you will save money, often shocking amounts of it, but to make the invisible forces visible. And once you see them, you cannot unsee them. Here is something that economists know and almost nobody else talks about. Being poor is the most expensive lifestyle available. This sounds like a paradox. It is not. It is arithmetic. Consider the Vimes boot theory, articulated by Terry Pratchett with more economic precision than most academic papers. A wealthy man buys a pair of boots for $50. They last 10 years. His cost per year? $5. A poor man cannot afford $50 at once. He buys a pair of boots for $10. They last 1 year. His cost per year? $10. Over a decade, the poor man spends twice as much on boots, and his feet are wet the entire time. This is not a story about boots. This is the operating logic of the entire lower economic tier. Let's run the actual numbers, because the numbers are where the horror lives. The average American in the bottom income quartile pays approximately 391% APR on payday loans when they need emergency cash. Not 10%, not 20%, 391%. A person with a credit score above 750 walks into a bank and borrows money at 6 to 8%. The same financial emergency costs them roughly 50 times less. The wealthy person's money is cheap. The poor person's money is catastrophically expensive. But it goes further. The person without a car pays more for groceries because they can only shop at the corner store, not the bulk warehouse. The person without a washer-dryer pays $8 per load at the laundromat, $416 per year, while the person who owns a machine pays roughly 50 cents per load in electricity and water. The person renting month to month pays a premium of 15 to 30% over someone with a lease. The person without health insurance pays full retail price for medications that insured people get at a 70% discount. Every single layer of the economic system charges a poverty premium. The system is not neutral. It is actively, structurally more expensive to be at the bottom. And this is before we even discuss the psychological tax, which is where things get genuinely dark. The 30-day detox forces you to confront this directly. When you stop all discretionary spending, you begin to see with terrifying clarity exactly which of your purchases were genuine choices and which were responses to the poverty premium, the small, constant, expensive compensations for a life lived under financial pressure. The $6 coffee that felt like a luxury but was actually a coping mechanism. The $15 takeout that felt like convenience but was actually the cost of not having time to cook because you're working 2 jobs. The $12 streaming subscription that felt like entertainment but was actually the cheapest available escape from a reality that felt inescapable. These are not indulgences. They are symptoms. And the detox makes you see the difference. Now we need to talk about what financial stress actually does to the brain, because this is where the conversation stops being about money and starts being about biology. In 2013, researchers Senthil Mullainathan and Eldar Shafir published a study in Science magazine that should have fundamentally changed how we talk about poverty. It didn't, because the implications were too uncomfortable. What they found was this: the cognitive burden of financial scarcity, the constant mental load of not having enough, reduces effective IQ by approximately 13 points. 13 points. That's the cognitive difference between average and borderline impaired. That's the difference between solving a problem and being overwhelmed by it. And it's not a character flaw. It's not laziness. It's not a lack of discipline. It is a measurable, reproducible neurological effect of living under constant resource scarcity. Here's the mechanism. When you are financially stressed, your brain's prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for long-term planning, impulse control, and rational decision-making, is chronically suppressed by elevated cortisol. Your amygdala, the threat detection center, is running hot. Your brain is in a state that evolution designed for immediate physical danger, not for navigating complex financial decisions. You are, neurologically speaking, trying to do calculus while someone is shooting at you. And then the system judges you for getting the math wrong. But it gets worse, because the brain under chronic stress doesn't just become less capable of good decisions, it actively seeks relief. This is where the dopamine trap closes around you. Dopamine, the neurotransmitter of anticipation and reward, is depleted by chronic stress. And the fastest, cheapest, most immediately available way to spike dopamine is consumption. Buying something, anything. The brief neurological hit of a purchase, even a small meaningless one, provides genuine, measurable relief from the cortisol fog of financial anxiety. This is why people who are broke buy things they don't need. Not because they're stupid, not because they lack willpower, but because their brain is running a survival algorithm that says, "You are in pain, here is the fastest available relief. Take it." The $4 energy drink, the $8 fast food meal, the $15 impulse buy at the checkout counter. These are not financial decisions. They are self-medication. They are the neurological equivalent of scratching a wound. It feels better for a moment, and then it's worse. The 30-day detox is, at its core, a forced withdrawal from this cycle. And like any withdrawal, the first week is the hardest. Your brain will generate elaborate justifications for why this particular purchase is necessary, reasonable, deserved. It will manufacture urgency. It will create emotional arguments that feel completely rational in the moment. This is not weakness. This is your dopamine system fighting for its supply. The question is whether you can outlast it. Most people cannot. And the reason most people cannot is not a lack of motivation. Motivation is abundant. Motivation is cheap. Motivation is what you feel on Sunday night when you've decided that starting Monday, everything changes. Motivation is the rocket fuel that burns bright and fast and is gone by Wednesday. What you need is not motivation. What you need is a structural change in your environment, because your environment is currently optimized at every level to extract money from you. Think about the architecture of a modern city. Every surface is a potential transaction. Every moment of boredom is a monetized opportunity. Every emotional state, loneliness, anxiety, excitement, celebration, has a corresponding product designed to capture it. The entire consumer economy is a machine built by the smartest people in the world, armed with the most sophisticated behavioral psychology ever developed, pointed directly at your wallet. And you think you're going to beat it with willpower? You're not. Nobody does. Willpower is a finite resource that depletes with use. This is not philosophy. This is the documented phenomenon of decision fatigue, studied extensively by Roy Baumeister and replicated across dozens of research contexts. The more decisions you make, the worse your subsequent decisions become. The consumer economy knows this. That's why the checkout line exists. That's why apps send you notifications at 9 p.m. That's why limited-time offers are always expiring. The detox works not because it gives you more willpower. It works because it removes the decisions entirely. When the rule is no discretionary spending, period, there is no decision to make. The cognitive load drops. The willpower isn't spent. And something remarkable happens in the space that opens up. You start thinking differently. Not immediately. The first week, you mostly feel irritated and deprived. You notice every coffee shop you walk past. You feel the phantom vibration of your shopping apps. You have moments of genuine anger at the arbitrariness of the constraint. This is normal. This is the withdrawal phase, and it is temporary. By the second week, something shifts. The noise starts to quiet. The constant low-level hum of consumer desire, which you didn't even notice before because it was always there, begins to fade. And in the silence, you start to hear something you haven't heard in a long time. Your own actual preferences. Not the preferences that advertising installed in you. Not the preferences that your social circle reinforces. Your actual, unmediated desires. This is the beginning of what I call monk mode. Monk mode is not asceticism for its own sake. It is not about suffering or virtue or proving something to yourself. It is a deliberate, temporary reduction of external stimulation to allow your cognitive baseline to reset. Think of it as defragmenting a hard drive that has been running corrupted processes for years. You're not deleting anything important. You're clearing the junk that's been consuming processing power. During the 30-day detox, monk mode means this. Every dollar you don't spend is not just a dollar saved. It is a unit of cognitive clarity reclaimed. Because every purchase you don't make is a decision you didn't have to rationalize, a dopamine hit you didn't have to recover from, a small piece of your attention that wasn't captured by the consumer machine. Over 30 days, these units accumulate, and what they accumulate into is something that money cannot directly buy. Mental bandwidth. Mental bandwidth is the actual scarce resource in modern life. Not time, not money. Bandwidth. The cognitive capacity to think clearly, plan ahead, resist impulse, and make decisions that serve your long-term interests rather than your immediate emotional state. The research on scarcity shows that financial stress consumes bandwidth. The detox restores it. And with restored bandwidth comes something that changes everything. The ability to see your own patterns. By day 15, most people who complete this experiment report the same experience. They start to see with uncomfortable clarity the emotional triggers behind their spending. The purchase that happened after a difficult conversation at work. The online shopping session that followed a social media scroll. The food delivery order that came after a moment of loneliness. The pattern is always there. It was always there. But the noise of constant consumption made it invisible. When you can see the pattern, you can interrupt it. And when you can interrupt it, you are no longer a passive participant in your own financial life. You are an agent. This is not a small thing. This is, in fact, the entire thing. But seeing the pattern is only the beginning, because the real trap, the one that catches even people who complete the detox and feel genuinely transformed by it, is returning to the same environment that created the pattern in the first place. This is the crab bucket problem. And it is more powerful than most people are willing to admit. The crab bucket is a real phenomenon. Put crabs in a bucket, and none of them will escape. Not because the bucket is too deep, but because every time one crab climbs toward the rim, the others pull it back down. Not out of malice, simply because they are crabs doing what crabs do. The bucket is full of crabs. The crabs pull each other down. This is the system. Your social environment operates on the same logic. Not because the people around you are malicious, most of them are not. They are simply crabs in the same bucket, and your attempt to climb out is, to them, a threat, a reminder of their own stasis, an implicit judgment of their choices, a disruption of the social equilibrium that everyone has unconsciously agreed to maintain. And so, they pull. They mock the detox. They call it extreme. They say quote 8 and quote 9 and quote 10. They are not wrong that you've changed. That's the point. The research on social influence and financial behavior is unambiguous. Your income tends to be the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, This is not mysticism. It is the documented effect of social norms on behavior. We calibrate our spending, our ambition, our risk tolerance, and our definition of, quote, 11 to the people around us. If everyone around you spends every dollar they earn, spending every dollar you earn feels normal. If everyone around you carries credit card debt, carrying credit card debt feels normal. If everyone around you lives paycheck to paycheck, living paycheck to paycheck feels normal. Normal is not neutral. Normal is a gravitational field. The detox disrupts your sense of normal. 30 days of zero discretionary spending recalibrates your baseline. Things that felt like necessities reveal themselves as habits. Things that felt like small amounts reveal themselves as significant patterns. And when you return to the world after 30 days, you have a choice. You can let the old normal reassert itself, and it will try, aggressively. Or you can use the recalibrated baseline to build something different. Most people let the old normal win. Not because they're weak, because they're alone. Because they go back to the same bucket, and the crabs are still there, and the pull is real and constant and social and emotional and deeply human. And they don't have a counterforce. The counterforce is not willpower. We've established that willpower is a depletable resource. The counterforce is a different kind of social environment. And here is where the detox becomes a gateway to something much larger than 30 days of not buying coffee. You cannot always immediately change your physical social environment. You cannot always move to a new city, find new friends, change your family. These are real constraints. And pretending they don't exist is the kind of advice that only works for people who don't actually need it. But you can change your informational environment. You can change who you are learning from. You can change whose voice is in your head when you make decisions. This is the function of what I call virtual mentorship, and it is one of the most underutilized tools available to anyone with access to a library or an internet connection. Every book written by someone who has built something significant is a direct transmission of their mental model. Not their tactics, not their specific decisions, their mental model, the underlying framework through which they perceive problems, evaluate options, and make choices. When you read Charlie Munger on mental models, you are not learning about investing. You are learning how to think. When you read Viktor Frankl on meaning under constraint, you are not learning about the Holocaust. You are learning how to maintain agency when the environment is hostile. When you read Nassim Taleb on anti-fragility, you are not learning about finance. You are learning how to build systems that get stronger under stress rather than breaking. These are not self-help books. They are operating system upgrades. And the 30-day detox, by clearing the noise of consumption, creates the mental space to actually absorb them. This is not coincidental. It is the mechanism. The detox doesn't just save money. It creates the cognitive conditions under which genuine learning becomes possible. Because here is what nobody tells you about reading. Reading, while stressed, distracted, and dopamine depleted, is almost useless. You move your eyes across the words, you turn the pages, you feel like you're doing something productive, but the information doesn't integrate. It doesn't change your mental models. It doesn't alter your behavior. It just passes through. The bandwidth isn't there to process it at depth. The detox restores the bandwidth. And with bandwidth comes the ability to actually learn, not just consume information, but integrate it, question it, apply it, and let it genuinely alter the way you see the world. This is the compounding effect that nobody talks about when they talk about reading. It's not the information itself. It's the change in perception that the information produces when you have the cognitive space to actually receive it. And now we arrive at the mathematics. Because everything we've discussed, the gravitational field, the poverty premium, the cortisol suppression, the dopamine trap, the crab bucket, the virtual mentorship, all of it is preparation for understanding one equation. One equation that separates the people who escape the gravitational field from the people who spend their entire lives burning fuel in atmospheric drag. The equation is compound interest. But not in the way your high school teacher explained it. Compound interest is not a savings strategy. It is a description of which side of the mathematical universe you are living on. There are two sides. On one side, compound interest works for you. On the other side, it works against you. And the difference between those two sides is not income. It is not intelligence. It is not luck. It is the decision, made once, clearly, with full understanding of the stakes, about whether you are going to be a producer of assets or a consumer of liabilities. Let's be precise about what these words mean, because they are used loosely and the looseness destroys their power. An asset is something that puts money in your pocket whether or not you show up. A liability is something that takes money out of your pocket whether or not you use it. A car is a liability. A rental property is an asset. A streaming subscription is a liability. A skill that generates freelance income is an asset. A credit card balance is a liability. A dividend-paying index fund is an asset. These are not moral categories. They are mathematical ones. The wealthy person's relationship with money is fundamentally different from the poor person's, not because of the amounts involved, but because of the direction of the flow. The wealthy person has arranged their financial life so that money flows toward them while they sleep. The poor person has arranged, or more accurately, has had arranged for them by default, a financial life where money flows away from them constantly in dozens of small streams through interest payments and fees and subscriptions and depreciating assets and the poverty premium we discussed earlier. The 30-day detox is the moment when you stop the outflow long enough to see it clearly. And what you see, when you see it clearly, is not just how much money is leaving. You see the structure of the leaving. You see that most of it is not going toward things that matter to you. Most of it is going toward things that you bought on autopilot, under stress, in response to social pressure, or as self-medication for a life that felt out of control. And when you see that, the question becomes, what would happen if I redirected even a fraction of that flow? The math is not complicated. If you are spending $400 per month on things that don't matter to you, and the average American who completes this experiment discovers they are spending between $300 and $800 per month on exactly this category, and you redirect that $400 into an index fund earning 8% annually, you have $59,000 in 10 years. Not from earning more, from stopping the leak. But the more important number is not the $59,000. The more important number is the mental model shift that makes the $59,000 possible. Because once you understand that you are capable of redirecting that flow, once you have experienced for 30 days what it feels like to be in control of your financial decisions rather than controlled by them, the question of whether to do it becomes almost trivial. The hard part was never the math. The hard part was seeing clearly enough to do the math. Let's talk about what the experiment actually looks like day by day, because the abstract is useful, but the concrete is where the transformation happens. Day 1 through 3. You feel fine, almost smug. This is easy. You wonder why you were worried. You are running on the initial energy of a new commitment, and everything feels manageable. This is the honeymoon phase, and it is not representative of what's coming. Day 4 through 7. The friction begins. You walk past a coffee shop and feel a pull that is disproportionate to your actual desire for coffee. You open your phone and find yourself navigating to a shopping app before you've consciously decided to. You feel a vague irritability that you can't quite locate. It's not hunger, it's not tiredness, it's something else. This is the withdrawal. Your dopamine system is recalibrating. It is uncomfortable. It is also the most important part of the experiment because this discomfort is data. It is telling you exactly how dependent your mood regulation has become on consumption. Day 8 through 14. Something starts to shift. The irritability fades. The phantom pulls towards spending become less frequent and less intense. You start to notice things you weren't noticing before, not because they're new, but because you have more attention available. You notice how much of your mental real estate was occupied by low-level consumer desire. You notice the texture of your actual preferences emerging from beneath the noise. You start to have ideas, not about what to buy, about what to do, about what to build, about what you actually want your life to look like. This is the cognitive dividend of the detox. This is the bandwidth returning. Day 15 through 21. You start to see the patterns with uncomfortable clarity. You can trace almost every past impulse purchase to a specific emotional state. You can see the triggers. You can see the sequence. Stress event, emotional response, consumption impulse, brief relief, return of stress, repeat. You can see it because you're no longer inside it. You're watching it from the outside. And from the outside, it looks exactly like what it is. A loop, a closed system, a trap with no exit, unless you interrupt the sequence at the impulse stage. You also start to see money differently, not as something that flows through you, but as something that can accumulate. This sounds obvious. It is not obvious when you're inside the loop. When you're inside the loop, money is a medium of exchange for immediate relief. When you're outside the loop, money is a tool for building something. The difference in perception is the difference between poverty and wealth, and it has almost nothing to do with the actual amounts involved. Day 22 through 30. You are now operating in a different mode. The decisions that felt difficult in week 1 feel almost automatic. Not because you've suppressed the desire, but because the desire has genuinely diminished. Your brain has recalibrated. The dopamine system has found other sources of reward. Progress on a project, a conversation that goes deep, a physical challenge, the quiet satisfaction of watching a number in a bank account grow rather than shrink. These rewards are slower and less intense than the consumer hit, but they are more durable, and they compound. By day 30, most people who complete this experiment report 3 things. First, they have saved significantly more money than they expected, typically between $400 and $1,200, depending on their baseline spending. Second, they feel cognitively clearer than they have in years. Third, and most importantly, they are afraid. Not of the experiment ending, of going back. That fear is important. That fear is information. That fear is your brain recognizing at some level below conscious articulation that what you've been living in is a system, and that the system is designed to pull you back. The system is not malicious. It is not a conspiracy. It is simply the aggregate result of millions of individual decisions by companies, advertisers, platform designers, and financial institutions, all of whom are rationally pursuing their own interests, and whose interests happen to align around one outcome: keeping you in the loop, keeping you spending, keeping you borrowing, keeping you consuming. Not because they hate you, because you are the product. Your attention is the inventory. Your spending is the revenue. Your debt is the asset. Their asset. Understanding this is not paranoia. It is literacy. Financial literacy is not knowing what an index fund is. Financial literacy is understanding the architecture of the system you're operating in and making conscious decisions about your relationship to it. Most people are not financially illiterate because they lack information. They are financially illiterate because they have never stepped outside the system long enough to see it as a system. The detox is the step outside. And here is what you see when you step outside. The system has a weakness. It is powerful, but it is not omnipotent. It runs on your participation. It requires your consent, not explicit consent, but the passive, habitual, unreflective consent of someone who has never questioned whether the loop is optional. The moment you question it, the moment you spend 30 days demonstrating to yourself that the loop is in fact optional, the system loses its grip. Not completely, not permanently. The gravitational field doesn't disappear, but you have now experienced escape velocity. You know it's possible. You know what it feels like, and that knowledge is not something the system can take back. Now let's talk about what comes after, because the detox is not the destination, it is the launch pad. The first thing you do after 30 days is not go back to normal spending. You do a reckoning. You take every category of spending that you eliminated during the detox and you ask, with genuine honesty, does this serve my actual life or does it serve the loop? Some things will come back. They should. There are genuine pleasures and genuine conveniences that are worth their cost. The question is not whether to spend money. The question is whether you are spending it consciously, in alignment with your actual values, or whether you are spending it on autopilot, in response to triggers you've never examined. The difference between those two modes of spending is not the amount, it is the agency. And agency, once reclaimed, changes everything. The second thing you do is build what I call the moat. Not a savings account, though a savings account is part of it. A moat is a combination of skills, assets, and relationships that creates distance between you and the gravitational field. It is the thing that makes you harder to pull back into the loop, and it is built not from a single skill or a single asset, but from the intersection of multiple capabilities that, combined, create something genuinely rare. The person who can write clearly, understand basic data analysis, and communicate technical concepts to non-technical audiences is not competing with writers or data analysts or communicators. They are competing with almost nobody because almost nobody has all three. The person who understands personal finance, has a network in a specific industry, and can teach, not just do, but teach, is not competing in a commodity market. They are operating in a market of one. This is the skill stack strategy, and it is the antidote to the commodity trap. Most people compete in commodity markets, markets where the product is interchangeable and the only differentiator is price. In a commodity market, you are always one step away from being replaced by someone cheaper. The moat strategy is about getting out of the commodity market entirely by combining skills in ways that are difficult to replicate and therefore command premium prices. The detox funds the moat. Not just financially, though the money you save during 30 days of zero discretionary spending is real and can be deployed towards skill development, tools, or seed capital. More importantly, the detox funds the moat cognitively. The bandwidth you reclaim during 30 days of reduced consumption is the bandwidth you need to actually learn the skills, build the relationships, and develop the judgment that the moat requires. You cannot build a moat while you're in the loop. The loop consumes everything: time, money, attention, cognitive capacity. The detox breaks the loop. And in the space the loop was occupying, you can build something that lasts. The third thing, and this is the one that most people skip because it is the most uncomfortable, is the social reckoning. You have to look honestly at the people around you and ask, are these relationships pulling me toward the life I want or away from it? This is not a question about whether these people are good people. Most of them are. It is a question about whether the social environment they create is compatible with the trajectory you're trying to build. The crab bucket is real. The pull is real. And the pull is not always obvious. It doesn't always look like mockery or sabotage. Sometimes it looks like an invitation to dinner at a restaurant you can't afford. Sometimes it looks like a group chat full of people complaining about their jobs without any intention of changing them. Sometimes it looks like a friendship that is built entirely around shared consumption, going out, buying things, spending money as the primary mode of connection. These are not bad people. They are people in the bucket. And you have to decide whether you are going to stay in the bucket with them or climb out. And if you climb out, you have to be prepared for the pull, the social pressure, the subtle judgment, the accusations of having changed, of being too serious, of thinking you're better than everyone else. You have changed. That's the point. And the people who are threatened by your change are telling you something important about the nature of your relationship with them. This doesn't mean abandoning everyone. It means being honest about which relationships are generative and which are extractive. It means investing more in the relationships that challenge you, support your growth, and hold you to a higher standard, and less in the relationships that require you to stay small to maintain the peace. And it means building new relationships, not by networking in the transactional, business card exchanging sense. By finding people who are operating at the level you want to operate at and learning from them, through their work, their writing, their public thinking, and, when possible, direct contact. The world is full of people who have solved the problems you're trying to solve. The detox gives you the clarity to find them and the bandwidth to actually learn from them. Let's return to the mathematics one final time, because the mathematics is where the story ends and the reality begins. Compound interest applied to money is powerful. Applied to skills, it is transformative. Applied to relationships, it is civilizational. The person who spends 30 days reclaiming their cognitive bandwidth, then uses that bandwidth to develop a rare skill stack, then uses that skill stack to build genuine relationships with people operating at a high level, then deploys the financial resources freed up by conscious spending into assets rather than liabilities, that person is not just saving money. That person is changing which side of the mathematical universe they live on. And the change is not linear. It is exponential. Because every asset generates resources that can be deployed into more assets. Every skill makes the next skill easier to acquire. Every high-quality relationship opens doors to more high-quality relationships. Every decision made from clarity rather than stress produces better outcomes that create the conditions for more clarity. The system works in both directions. The same compounding logic that traps people in the loop can, once redirected, accelerate their escape from it. This is not a guarantee. Nothing in life is a guarantee. There are people who complete the detox and return to the loop within a week. There are people who build the moat and watch it get washed away by circumstances outside their control. There are people who do everything right and still face headwinds that no amount of personal transformation can overcome. The world is not fair. The gravitational field is not equally strong for everyone. Some people are launching from sea level, and some people are launching from the bottom of a canyon, and pretending otherwise is a lie that serves no one. But here is what is true, regardless of your starting position. The loop is optional. The consumption autopilot is optional. The dopamine trap is optional. Not easy to escape. We have been very clear about how hard it is, and why, and what the biological and social forces are that make it hard. But optional. The cage door is open. It has always been open. The bars are made of habit and social pressure and neurological conditioning and the accumulated weight of 1,000 small decisions made on autopilot. They are real bars, but they are not steel. 30 days of not spending a single unnecessary dollar is not a financial strategy. It is a proof of concept. It is 30 days of demonstrating to yourself with your own behavior that you are capable of choosing differently, that the loop is not you, that the autopilot is not your identity, that the gravitational field, while real and powerful, is not destiny. The rocket doesn't escape gravity by working harder. It escapes gravity by achieving a specific velocity, a threshold beyond which the math changes, and what was pulling it down begins to fall away. You know what that velocity feels like now. You felt it in the second week of the detox, when the noise quieted and the clarity came. You felt it in the moment you traced a spending pattern back to its emotional root and saw it for what it was. You felt it in the quiet satisfaction of a number growing rather than shrinking. That feeling is not a reward for completing an experiment. That feeling is data. It is your nervous system telling you that this is what operating outside the gravitational field feels like. It is uncomfortable and unfamiliar and sometimes lonely, and always worth it. The question is not whether you can do this. You can. The question is whether you will choose to, knowing what it costs, not in money, but in comfort, in social ease, in the warm numbness of the loop. The cage door is open. The question is whether you're going to walk through it.